I have a question.
Yes.
What got you into this whole thing of like relationships and doing kind of an advisory YouTube channel talking about it? Like you're really passionate about this topic.
I
Well,
am.
it's
Yeah.
a
Like,
niche. It's a niche. It's something that interests all of us, but for some reason we don't really talk about it.
yeah. So, like, my coaching practice is really about, tackling the tough conversations that people avoid having. And I've noticed that, especially, this is like so applicable to romantic relationships specifically. And I'm also under the impression that it's my fundamental belief that like the quality of your life directly correlates to the quality of your relationships, and especially your intimate relationships contribute so much to the quality of your happiness, like probably more so than all of the other ones combined. And so for me, like my contribution to the world, I feel, has to center on helping people have better connections, helping people have better relationships, helping people communicate in a way that really fosters those connections and maintains them over time. So I think that's really what's needed in the world today. We're so advanced in our technology. We're so advanced in the tools that we have now to connect, but the fundamentals of expressing yourself, the fundamentals of actually saying what you need, asking for what you want, and really like giving and getting feedback, that's the part that we seem to have lost with all the technology that we have. So for me, like my background is in psychology. I work with at-risk youth. I also worked in in an HR capacity and in education as well. So I have like a really varied background, and I noticed that in every single job that I had, that's all my position's always been the same. It's always been kind of this advisory liaison kind of role, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's like in a boardroom in an employee setting. So it's something that slowly kind of developed over time, but it's something that very much reflects my beliefs and values about what's really important in life.
You said you got my attention to something that our relationships or our intimate relationships contribute a lot, correlates a lot to our own personal happiness.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
question I've always been thinking to myself is it more about us and being happy with our own selves, or is it the partner's issue? Like whenever you see couples and you found issues, is your approach more about trying to find what's within you or what's within the partner?
Well, you can't really separate the two. Like my whole thing is that relationships are only as good as the people in them. So, in order to be in a healthy relationship, like you rightly pointed out, you do have to be in good working order yourself. Now, good working order doesn't mean you have to be 100% perfect in every single area of your life. But I would argue that in order to relate to another human being and maintain that relationship, you have to cultivate a level of self-awareness with regards to your own needs, your tendencies, your beliefs, your hang-ups, in order to be able to like accept anyone else's and to deal with anyone else's. But yeah, what I find over and over again is that we enter into relationships with people who mirror to us the issues that we have to work on within ourselves. So I don't sort of distinguish like, do you have to be happy with yourself or with others? I think that those things, you can't pry them apart. They're so connected.
I remember we had this conversation once about love languages.
Hmm.
Coming from Jordan, like it was the first time I hear about it. Pretty much we're ignorant when it comes to relationships and sexuality. Like we don't have sex education in school. It's a taboo topic. If we're in a relationship, chances are we'll hide it from our parents until it gets official. The
Hmm.
moment your parents will know that you're seeing someone, the next day you'll get the question, so when are you going to get married? You know?
You're very pressured from the beginning. It really shapes, I imagine it would really shape like how you behave in the relationship. Like the stakes are immediately so high.
Oh, the thing is, I've been thinking about it, like the whole notion of a nuclear family, of monogamous, exclusive nuclear family. It was kind of built on the basis of, like, let's be real, it was built on division of labor and it was built on patriarchy one way or the other. So the
Yeah.
man was historically in the past hundreds of years, the higher class in the family one way or the other. He's the one working outside, and the woman will take care of the children. But now we seem to be living in a more complex society, and the rise of individualism and the rise of feminism. I'm not arguing it's a good thing or a bad thing. It affected how relationship works.
Hmm.
In Sweden, I've watched a documentary called Swedish Theory of Love. It says since 2012, the majority of customers to sperm banks are single moms who want to raise kids on their own. So it seems we live in a society where women don't need a man anymore, unlike back in the days where women needed a man for to provide for them, for protection. Where they kind of accepted the gender roles one way or the other. They were living at home, taking care of the children to a certain extent. Things were moving to us, to a certain degree. Things were functioning. Um, uh, I don't know if, like, to be honest, seriously, I want to ask you this question. I don't know if a nuclear family still works in the complex world that we live in. I've seen lots of couples struggling to have kids, like everybody is postponing the question of having kids. Even lots of people are now more inclined to be in polyamorous relationship, like the whole notion of monogamy is shrinking. It's not the ultimate truth, the only way of living. So what's your views on this whole things? Like, what is, when we say relationship, what's your idea of a relationship?
Okay, so a lot of you threw out a lot of different ideas that I want to touch on. So first, we're talking about love languages, and we can go back to that if you'd like.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so I think that if you want to talk about, polyamory and alternative relationships, definitely those are on the rise. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the idea of needing a partner and women needing a man or not needing one. I think that the like you said, the rise of feminism put forward this sort of like propaganda that like just because we are like economically self-sufficient, we can raise children on our own, we can't, like, it can be done financially, that we don't actually, that women don't actually need a man. But I would argue that like most women that I've met, they want a partner. They would like to ideally raise children with a partner, and it's because they're not able to like find a suitable partner who's able to create the kind of relationship that they're looking for, that they then, when they get to an advanced age, look for alternatives to creating a family. And yeah, like you said, with the rise of individualism, we have more options. We don't have to defer to like the nuclear family. And I would say that the nuclear family is like an invention of the 1950s. Like, it was, if you look at hunter-gatherer societies and like ancient societies, it was never the expectation that like, one man and one woman and their 2 to 3 kids would live together in a hut. Like, that was never it. Like, it, there's this expression that it takes a village to raise a child, and in hunter-gatherer societies, the way that we naturally evolved, we would have a village of people that are interconnected and related to one another, helping to raise children and also providing for a lot of our like social needs. Right now, I think why like monogamy is really struggling is because we've gotten to a point where, and Esther Perel, one of my favorite writers, talks about this, where we expect our partner to be everything. Like, we expect to have this amazing sexual connection, to be like totally satisfied intellectually with them, to be to enjoy, to have similar hobbies, to have the same like child rearing practices, spiritual beliefs. And we have, our expectations of monogamy are so much higher than they were before. So I think a lot of people are really struggling to find a partner that fits into that mold, when in reality, like, I don't know if that's such a realistic like expectation. I think that, and that's why like my focus is on all kinds of relationships, not only romantic ones, but also, how are your relationships with your with your with your parents, your relatives? How are your relationships with your friends? What role do you play in your community? Like, these are all things that we really should focus on, to take some of the pressure away from monogamy. I don't think the answer is not to have monogamy or for everyone to be polyamorous, but I do like the idea that people now have a bit more of a choice, a little bit more of a leeway in how they want to structure their relationships, and they can do so consciously. They can plan to do so. They now have the language. Part of that is, the love languages. Part of that is tools like nonviolent communication, which I've recently gotten into. Part of that is, therapeutic frameworks that are put forward by various psychologists and sociology, professionals, mental health professionals. We have all these tools at our disposal so that we can create the kind of connections that are really going to serve us over time. And we don't. I think that people are starting to realize that, like, it's kind of unrealistic to expect your partner to fulfill all of your needs. That, traditionally, you would have a whole village providing for you. So I don't think, yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
To a certain extent, yes. You said at the beginning of your talk, like most of the females that you know want to be with a partner, and I focus on the word want. It's not a need anymore; it's a want. You don't really need a man.
Yeah.
It's okay to want one, you know.
Well, I mean, it depends on the person, obviously, but I think that it's actually much healthier to come into a relationship from a place of wanting company, wanting connection, rather than needing it. Because need implies that without it, you would be somehow less. And I think that a lot of people would find that, an offensive notion that they are somehow, that their life is like somehow less worth living because they're not in a relationship, because they haven't found their, other half, so to speak. I think that, yeah, like, it's coming into a relationship from a place of wanting something, but not necessarily needing it, like still having your own things and your own connections and your own projects is a much healthier way to approach it.
Fair, fair. I agree with this point. We touched into love languages. Can you please elaborate more?
Yes, I would love to. So, yeah, there was a book called The Five Love Languages, and basically, it talks about how people have different ways of receiving and giving love. So, your love language is the way that you communicate your love for others, and also the way that you feel appreciated and you feel loved in relationships. And the book argues that there are different modalities or languages that people use when they're expressing their love and when they're receiving love. And the five love languages, according to this book, are quality time. So, for example, spending time together, like really connecting, either socially, intellectually, romantically, whatever that might look like for you. So, quality time. The other one, the obvious one that I think a lot of people might be familiar with, is gifts. So, getting gifts for one another, maybe like, you're going to another country and you pick up some souvenirs for your loved ones, because you want them to know that you're thinking about them. That's a gift love language. Another one is acts of service. So maybe there's a little bit of overlap with gifts, because sometimes an act of service is a gift, but the difference is that an act of service is something that could be just like that, a service. So I noticed that your car is due for, a checkup. So, I took it to the dealership for you, or I know that you're very tired after work, so I vacuumed the apartment for you, something like that.
It's more into, like you said, there's an overlap, but I see active service as giving time to your loved one, while
By
gift
doing
can imply
service.
giving money, you know?
Well, I mean, sometimes an act of service also requires money. Sometimes an act of service is like, oh, I noticed um, you don't have any more socks, and I bought you socks. So it's kind of an act of service, because it's not really like It's not really, it's a gift that has more of a functional purpose. It's not
Mm,
like, oh, I got you a bouquet of roses because it's a romantic gesture.
okay.
It's more like, oh, this is like for you. This act is meant for you to function in the world optimally. That's how I see acts of service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, fair, fair. And then the
Um,
fifth one.
and then fourth one is touch. So some people really need physical connection. Maybe they need like kisses, caresses, hugs, hand holding. That's pretty obvious, that one. And then the last one is my love language, which is words of affirmation. So actually telling someone that you care about them, giving them compliments. I'm such a compliment whore. Like I love compliments. I will dig for
And
them forever. Like I will readily admit this to anyone
yeah.
because like my motto is flattery will get you everywhere. Because I love words. I'm a words person. So for me, having people tell me that they appreciate me, having them give me compliments, having them even send me like texts, notes, things like that, cards for my birthday. Like I don't want any gifts. I just want a written card. So that would be, yeah,
Can
words
you
of
put
affirmation.
your laptop in a stable place? It's just jumping.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, sure.
You got excited. You got excited with the word of
I got
affirmation.
excited. I got excited. Yes.
But have you always knew that this is the thing that you like, or you had to actively think about it, about which love language you appreciate the most?
Well, so for me, I grew up in a family and in a culture where gifts were the primary mode through which, like, for example, my parents expressed their love and care. And it never really sat right with me. It wasn't ever something that I really responded to. Those weren't the things that made me feel loved, but growing up, I had no vocabulary for really expressing that. And it wasn't until I came across this book or this idea that I realized like, oh, I'm not weird. Like there's actually other people like me who don't respond to gifts and who don't, really express their love through gifts. And so it was something that I intrinsically felt inside of myself, but had no language to express. And so that's been my journey, is really coming to terms with the fact that the way that I give and receive love is normal. There are other people who feel the same way, and that this is something that's really individual. So, yeah, to answer your question, it's something I always felt, but didn't have the vocabulary to express until I came across the nomenclature.
Like, do you think like love language should be communicated between partners? Like,
Absolutely. Oh my God, that's like my number one question on a date is like, what are your love languages? Like 110% I would ask that.
but I don't know. Do you expect people to know what their love languages is?
I mean, I expect them to like. I mean, expect is a very strong word.
Uh,
Expecting anything, I think, is a pitfall. But for me personally, if I'm personally interested in someone in a romantic way, I would hope that they have done the kind of reflection that I've done about the subject. Um, and I'm fully willing to explain the concept and to point them to resources so that they can get to know themselves better. But in my experience, having compatible love languages is one of the key ways that that really makes a relationship go. Like really, I've been in situations where my love language is really different or is incompatible with somebody else's love language, and it's created a lot of tension and resentment over time. So that level of compatibility is something that I personally value a great deal. What
um,
about you? What do you think your love languages are?
this was the pause. You know, I was reflecting. It's not gifts. It's not words, but I'm confused among the other three, and I think both of them three.
So not gifts, not words. So there's touch. Is it touch for you?
Touch works, and active
What
service
about
work, quality
quality time? Like
quality
spending
time.
quality time with someone?
Yeah, yeah, but it varies. It varies. I don't know. I don't know, like how not scientific, but how explicit this love languages is. You know, um, uh, like when I started to think about it, it felt that I'm categorizing myself, and I have to put myself in a category of those, and then I should look for a partner that matches my category. It didn't resonate well, to be honest.
Okay, so maybe you're sort of like a complicated blend of a few different ones. Maybe it's my belief that usually people have a predominant one, but also the other thing to think about is you could have a way that you prefer other people to communicate love to you. So you have a receptive love language, and maybe the way that you communicate love is actually different. So maybe the things that make you feel loved are, acts of service, but maybe you prefer quality time when it comes to like actually sharing your love with others. So it could be that there's a difference there as well between the giving and taking. But I would reflect on the way that I would figure it out is I would reflect like the top 3 times in your life that you felt very loved and cared for, that you really felt like connected and at peace with a particular connection. It doesn't need to be romantic, it can be platonic. And then what was present there for you? What made those experiences special for you? And is there like a commonality there?
I think it needs more time to reflect on this one. I'm not ready to
Yeah.
have an answer. But now that you mentioned platonic relationship, um, uh, like for heterosexual couples, do you think like platonic love exists, or it's just temporary phase? Like,
For heterosexual couples, you mean it within the couple, or is it possible to have
is it possible to love someone on a platonic way?
if you're romantically involved with them?
Yeah, and where do you draw the line? Like when you say love someone in a platonic way,
Yeah, so
how do you separate if it is romantic or not? Like what is the
well,
layer?
I would say that even platonic love has, well, like the way that I differentiate platonic love is that there's not a sexual component to it. There's not a desire to want to like, be close to them physically, but there is a desire to want to be close to them like emotionally and intellectually and socially. So for me, that's a really important aspect actually of couplehood. And furthermore, I'm the kind of person where I think that even friendships can have a romantic dimension to them, right? Without being sexual. And I've had that so many times where I've had friendships that are really deep and that are really like, that almost like in every way echo a romantic relationship, except for the fact that we're not sexual together. We don't connect on a sexual level, but
Is it
in
because
all
you're
of the
not
other
attracted to
aspects,
them?
it's there.
Is it because you're not attracted to them?
Yeah, it's because that's just not the vibe. Like, there's something in sexuality that's very unique, and I think it has to do with like your pheromones and hormones and so much other stuff, that's shaped very early on. That yeah, like, I've had, you know, both relationships with both males and females that are platonic, but that are very romantic. Like, one example that I can give you is, I have a close friend who I got to know over the past year in when I was living in Chiang Mai, and we spent so much time together. Like when I first arrived in Chiang Mai, we met and we were pretty much inseparable. Like we were joined at the hip. Like we had the same sense of humor, same values, same interests. We traveled together. We had such a great time. We would go to dinners together. We took walks together. We had so many deep conversations and we connected on such deep levels. And then she decided to actually go back to her home country, and when she told me, like, gosh, I'm going back to Switzerland, this is my friend Anina, I felt like, oh my gosh, like, this is like, I was panicked because it felt like a breakup. And I felt the same separation anxiety with that particular relationship as I would for a romantic relationship. And I told her as much. And I think I think that that sometimes happens. To answer your question as to whether or not a couple can have a platonic relationship, I hope they do. Because having a relationship that's purely sexual, I think is not not really ideal. It's something that probably has an expiration date if you don't have the other dimensions to it.
But if you have the other dimension sit and done and you're attracted to the person, I find it very hard to be in a platonic relationship with that person.
Well, what about? Well, I mean, you've described yourself. You identify as like heterosexual, right?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So then I'm sure you have examples of where you have like a close male friend that you don't want to be sexual with, but you really connect with and really like have deep feelings for, like on a platonic level.
Fair, but then again, if you're, and I'm just mentioning heterosexual example to make it easier in this conversation. I'm a guy. I meet a girl. She's attractive. I'm attracted to her, and we connect on the other aspects. I find it very challenging to be in an absolute platonic relationship. If it is to be platonic, I think there is a limitation to the connection. You know, you won't go the next mile. I don't know. I don't know why, but this is how I view it. It's
Hmm.
harder to dig deep into it. Chances are one of those two will be attracted to the other.
It could happen. I don't know. I've had all kinds of experiences. I've definitely had experiences where attraction grows over time. And I've had experiences where, more often than not, for me at least, like usually when, like, I'll know if I'm attracted to someone or not pretty much right away. And that usually doesn't change that much. But I know for different people it's different. For different people it can be different, and that's okay. I think the key part is to really stay present to what's happening for you, and to be able to deal with the fallout of that, and to be able to manage your emotions, and to communicate, and really to maintain the relationship the best you can while being authentic to who you are
Authentic. Yeah,
and your needs.
I've seen your video about authenticity. And you said I hate the word, but you just gotta be real.
You
Oh,
just got to be real. You just got to be you. Like I've definitely had that example too, where like I remember in college, I had a close male friend that at first it started out really platonically for me, and we spent a lot of time together, and then slowly I developed feelings for this person, and I got to a point where, like you, I realized that actually at that point I didn't have the resources to be able to have them in my life in a platonic way. And I actually like I well, being like 20 and super dramatic, I like professed my love to this man, and I was just like, "No, I can't be your friend, and no, we have to end our friendship because I have these feelings for you, and I'm not able to like hold space for you as a friend. I'm not able to like really be present for you as a friend. So let's kind of end our relationship." And he responded with like, "Okay, I appreciate you telling me, and I kind of suspected as much, but I'm still interested in being your friend. So how about we downgrade this breakup to a break? How about we give it 6 months, and I'll contact you after 6 months and see where we are." And at the time, I resisted it, but at that age, so much changes in 6 months that when he did eventually contact me down the line, things had shifted so much in my life that I was then able to accept him back into my life on a purely platonic basis, and we're still in touch to this day. So yeah, I think you just have to be present to what's happening for you. You have to speak your truth, and you also might want to look at the fact that your truth and what's coming up for you is also not written in stone. It's something that could change depending on circumstances, and that's why it's really important to keep those lines of communication open.
um, uh, how much your first love affected your life? Like, did you get damaged afterwards? Like, how did you?
First love. I mean, I'd have to really think about who was my first love. That would be the question to ask. Like who was my first love? I can answer it in a general sense, like, certainly I can think of early romantic experiences as ones that sort of set a few themes in motion that kind of reappeared through time and that I've addressed in different ways. But I mean, who's to say who is my first love? Like, is
You,
it my, what's that?
you have to say who's
You.
your first love.
Who was my first love? I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to tell you because, like, I think that love is not something, for me at least, love is not something that I restrict only to the romantic sphere. So, probably my first love was like my childhood best friend, you know?
It's nice to see using love in as a generic term, to friends, to family, to a
I
partner.
think so. Yeah, I think that that's something that I really want to popularize because I think when we limit love to just the romantic sphere, we also limit the scope of our own experience of love. I think that our lives are so enriched by like the feeling of love and connection that why limit it to just people who you're physically intimate with or committed to in a romantic sense. That seems like a very narrow scope.
I think we need more vocabs to express love. Love is very generic. There should be a word to
I
express.
think that's a linguistic limitation largely.
I
I think
think that,
the ancient Greeks they had was it the Greeks or the Romans? Yeah, I think it was the Greeks. They had different words for love, and in fact, you I think it was you who was telling me about how in your language there's different words for even the word friend and like the
yeah,
friendship that you have. So I think definitely English is an impoverished language when it comes to really delineating all the different shades of connection that exist. Um, and I hope that that changes with the rise of like memification of language. I hope that we get more of a richness going in that category.
sadly, we have that riches in in Arabic, but unfortunately, we like in Arabic we got 1.5 million words, I guess, in comparison to 100,000 in English. So it's
Wow.
15,000 words. Yet we don't know all of them. We don't use all of them. We use our own slang, our own accent, which is a bit. It lack vocabs. Like I cannot use the formal Arabic words in normal day life. Like I
Mm-hmm.
won't know them and people won't know them. It will just sound weird. It will be.
Archaic. Yeah.
It'll sound talking Shakespearean language. To
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
yeah. It
Old.
just sounds weird.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. We're definitely missing out on an opportunity there. I'm a big proponent in bringing words back, bringing them back into the fold, and popularizing them and really educating people. Because I think that the more words that you have, the greater your chances are of like really conveying what's inside of your heart and your mind.
I agree 100%. It was a challenge with me whenever I'm dating a native English speaker. I always, I mean, like my English isn't bad, but still,
Very good, I would
my
say.
my vocabs is limited. So chances are you'll have a better chance to express yourself in words than me. So I always
Mm,
find myself being misunderstood lots of times due to the lack of words,
mm-hmm.
which
Absolutely.
sucks ass. I mean, imagine we have infinite thoughts and emotions, yet we have limited vocabs to express them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But even people that are both like native speakers of whatever language they have their relationship in, come across this problem in another way is that maybe they both know the word that they're using, but they have different connotations of what that means, right? So they have different understanding about what the word actually connotes. So either way, we're not completely immune to misunderstandings, even if we are both native speakers of the language that we're communicating in.
Lena, I want to ask you a question that's been running in my head. With the complex world that we live in and the indefinite choices that we have, what's your advice to finding a partner? I'm talking about romantic partner. Lots of people I've seen around, they always have the fear of missing out on being with other partners, and then the high expectations, the high standards that's going on around. It just sounds harder for people to be in a committed serious relationship now. It's decisions are burdens. When you have so many options, it makes it hard to choose one.
Ah, yeah. So there's a few different issues there. So number one is how to find a partner, and number two is how to then be okay with this. So your question, you have a double-barreled question here. So how to find a partner and how to be okay with that choice. And yeah, so I'm
First,
gonna be
how to find a
yeah.
partner.
How to find a partner. I mean, I don't think that I can shed light on that any more than any other, kind of self-help kind of people. It's the same advice that anybody else would give, which is number one, getting out there, working on the hobbies that you feel passionate about. I think that more so than anything else, you need to put your energy into the things that bring you joy. And when you're resonating at the joy that you're feeling from doing those things, you're much more likely to sort of attract this person into your sphere of existence. So doing the things that bring you joy, number one, and really leaving your apartment, which is really hard to do right now. But
Yeah, love in the time of Corona.
yeah, love in the time of Corona. Yeah, it's our modern take. So, but really, like, I think when you are starting to think, oh gosh, I want a partner, I would say working on yourself and really becoming the kind of partner that you want to attract. So, a good exercise would be to, I love lists. I'm a list person, being a words person. Make a list of all the things that you want from a partner, and then ask yourself some difficult questions like, am I like that? Do I have these qualities? And if the answer to that is yes for some of them and no for some other ones that are on your list, then maybe your project right now should be based on, getting to a point where you're actually able to offer the things that you're seeking to receive from a partner. And then in the process of actually doing that, you'll find that it's not that you it's not even so much that you need a partner, because you'll become much more self-sufficient, and then your list will change and become more fluid, and you will change and you will become more fluid as a result. So number one, working on yourself. Like if you're single right now and you're like, oh, I want a partner, why can't I get one? Start with that. Start with making a list of all the things you want. Really, really go crazy. Make it, 100 items that you want. And then really ask yourself, like the questions that I said, like, do I have these things? Can I actually offer that? Maybe make a separate list of the things that you bring into the relationship. And then when it comes to actually like keeping your partner and like not having FOMO, well, I think that that is a little bit more complicated, because one of the things that prevents us from really like settling into a relationship and being comfortable is the fact that sadly a lot of us see partnership and our partners as commodities. So I really love the book The Art of Love by Eric Fromm, and he's like a psychoanalyst from like the 1940s, I think it was. He's like psychodynamic, so he was a follower of Freud. So like not take everything that you read in there with a grain of salt, but one of the points that he mentioned that really resonated with me is that, yeah, like in a capitalist economy, we also tend to extend that capitalism into the private sphere. So rather than looking at people as like divine beings that are like emanations of uh like God crystallized on earth and like stardust in like a human body, and really seeing the infinite potential of every single person you come into contact with, we're seeing people as commodities that add a certain level of prestige or comfort into our lives. And I think that a lot of the FOMO that people experience is precisely from that viewpoint, is from looking at your partner as a collection of traits that you get something from. And that's the thing that you should do battle with. If you ever want to be happy in a relationship, stop seeing your partner as an accessory to your life and start seeing them as a divine being. Start seeing them for all of the beauty and all of the magic that they offer to you. And I'm not saying gloss over the negative things. That's not what I'm saying at all. Um, what I'm saying is that in order to get and keep love, you need to change the way that you look at the world more globally. You need to look at the world in a loving way. You need to cultivate a sense of compassion for yourself, for your friends, for your community, for the world. That's why it's an art of love. It's not something that you can just singularly direct towards a romantic partner. It's a lifestyle. It's the way that you connect with everything and everyone. The way that you connect with your partner is just an extension. It's a reflection of how you connect with all the different aspects of your life. So if you connect with people on a shallow level, if you connect with yourself on a shallow level, if you connect with the world on a shallow level, on a give and take, what am I getting from this situation kind of way, then of course you're going to create that dynamic in your romantic relationship too. And like an iPhone, you're going to be looking at your wife or your husband thinking, I want the newer upgraded version. I want the one with the bells and whistles. I want the one with the better camera, you know?
I really like your answer. This is probably the most useful segment of the five podcasts that I've had so far. It's nice. It's nice, man. It's nice. It's nice. It's good to realize that it all starts from us, from how we see the world. From how we see everything.
Love is not some love and happiness, I would argue, is not something that you give or get. Rather, it's an orientation. It's how you see, it's a lens through which you see the world. And so when you have love as the lens through which you see everything, and you have active love as the way that you interact with everything, you're not going to be so focused on finding the perfect partner
Do you believe in the
or even
one?
a partner.
Do you believe in the perfect partner? The
No,
one?
of course
No,
I don't.
doesn't
No,
exist.
like what is perfect? Like, no, I don't. I believe that, like I said, relationships are only as good or as long as like yeah, are only as good as the people that are in them. So, I think every single partner that you have actually is the perfect partner for you at that particular time in your development. Like every time you meet someone and you connect, that's actually the perfect connection for you right now.
Right now,
There aren't any mistakes being
right
made.
now, you said right now, and this is an important keyword because we might find the perfect partner for us right now, which is finding the. This is the first part of the question. Then we got rid of the FOMO and we're happy with it. But then with time, we change, our partners change, and eventually love. Fade away somehow, fade out a bit, or you see yourself stuck in a relationship that's built on maybe mutual respect, getting used to each other's, but the spark isn't there anymore. At that time, chances are you'll be in need or wanting different things in a partner, but then you kind of feel stuck in this relationship. I don't know if it'll be the right time to, I don't know, leave or divorce if you're married, or you should work on it and make it work. Well, I guess this is a major challenge that we face on everyday life. Looking at couples around me that are married, it goes one of multiple options. Cheating rates is a bit high these days. Divorce rate is high. People switching to an open marriage. It happens. Also in Jordan, being a conservative country, I've seen open marriages already.
Very surprised to hear that.
I'm surprised to hear that as well, to know that as well. And then people who are happily ever after, but those people are the minority. So I don't think it is the only way of doing stuff. But then we live in a society, and societies judge us, and societies want us to be in a committed, serious relationship for life. But
So, mhm.
whenever troubles come in a relationship, or just love fades away, which I think, to a certain extent, we can say that it might be a fact. What would you do in such a position?
I don't believe that that's a fact.
Yeah.
Although I don't want to deny the fact that that is many people's lived experience. That is their reality. For
Mm.
me, it's not an inevitability. And the reason why I say that is because, over the past year, I've been exposed to like a lot of approaches to relationships, and in particular, the tantric relationship, which has a principle that I have really incorporated into my life, and am interested in incorporating, which is the concept of active love. So too often we kind of rest on our laurels when it comes to romantic love. Like you were talking about the spark, right? This initial spark of interest, and expecting that spark to sort of to stay in the relationship through time, and judging the quality of the relationship based on the presence or absence of that spark. And that is very much passive love. That is like, it's exactly like sitting on your laurels. It's kind of like getting a job. You know, like when you get a job and you're like, um, first of all, the process of getting a job is not usually a passive process. Like you usually have to like apply, you have to get some credentials, you go to you go through some interviews, and then maybe you finally get the job, and you're trying your best, and you're meeting your coworkers, and everything is like, maybe you're really excited about it, and you have that initial spark of interest. But if you then don't apply yourself at all over time, if you don't develop your skills, if you don't really seek out opportunities for development, um, and you just you don't change anything about the situation, of course you're not going to have that same initial interest and spark that you had, when you first got the job. But in a professional setting, people would advise you to look at your qualifications, look at your skills, seek out challenges, look for projects that you could apply yourself into. That's not the case with romantic love. With romantic love, there's this notion that this initial spark is supposed to carry us through, that that's enough. And it's not enough. And in fact, this notion of active love is something that I really resonate with, because it actually it requires some degree of like actively expressing your love and actively working on your relationship throughout its whole life cycle. And there are a lot of like ritualistic practices that are included in that within Tantra. But even if you're not somebody who's particularly into like yoga or Tantra or like alternative things, just the notion that you need to actively work on relationships, you need to actively maintain connection, um, so that you don't drift apart, is something really important. And another aspect to this that I learned about by reading Esther Perel is that romantic relationships are very much a balance between safety and adventure. So like every single person in their lives, more like globally, not just in their romantic lives, but in your regular life, you always balance these two things. These are fundamental needs that every single human person has: the need for safety and predictability, and the need for adventure and novelty. And where you are on that spectrum is different for different people. But what ends up happening is that most people in a relationship at first, they have all this novelty, right? And then they sort of like they fool themselves into thinking, oh, now I know everything about you. Oh, now there's nothing new that I could potentially learn about you. And that comes from our need for safety. We actually do need some degree of predictability and reliability from our partner. But what happens is you fool yourself into thinking you know everything about them. You fool yourself into thinking that, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. And so that's where people get bored. But it's actually because they stop actively getting to know their partner. Probably over the span of your relationship with one person, you'll actually be dating seven people, seven different versions of that person over time. And the success of your relationship depends on your willingness to get to know these seven different iterations of this person over time. Because
Uh,
like, yeah, because like there's no way, like people spend a lifetime getting to know just themselves. Like we are so multifaceted. So how can you ever say that you know everything about another human being. It's simply not possible. The fact that people get bored is a testament to their laziness, to their passivity in relationships. And I really think that if we're to expand our consciousness, to expand our awareness of ourselves and of our partners, we would not fall into that trap, because we would know that there's always so much more to learn. There's always so much more to experience. There's always an infinite number of selves that's hiding inside of your partner, just as there are inside of you.
Generally speaking, are you the kind of person who think we should accept our partners the way they are, or we should push them to be a better version of themselves, whatever that better version we think it is? You know how people are more inclined to changing their partners to fit their needs or wants or whatever. Is this dangerous, or this is a normal part of a relationship?
I think that first of all, your partner is not a bonsai tree for you to shape to your needs. Not a customizable Android phone where you
But it
can.
works both ways, no? Like this is part of the compromise, no? Like
So I'm
if
not finished. I'm not quite finished with that thought. So it's your part. If you approach the relationship with the sense of, this person is so moldable, let me just spend my lifetime molding them. That's the wrong attitude to have, in my opinion. However, I fully believe that love is something that, like, the presence of love tends to organize, tends to shed light on the dark and misty corners of your soul. And whereas, like, on your own, you might have all of these different things going on, some of which are maybe to your detriment, and no one really, like, maybe the people around you, like, that are like your friends, that are kind of close to you, maybe they're a little bit distant at times, maybe they can give you feedback, but it doesn't really resonate as much as it does when your partner gives you feedback. Because when your partner gives you feedback, because they know you so deeply, and so like such a there's such a depth to their perception, that just by their sheer presence, there's going to be change that happens. I think that's inevitable. That just by this person shedding the light of consciousness onto you with the kindness and compassion of love, like, of course you're going to change. You're going to change just based on your partner's presence. And I think that there's absolutely an art to giving feedback as a lover. And a lot of people, I would say most people, have not mastered that art, because what ends up happening is that they will give feedback with a shade of judgment or criticism, and without the, like, maybe at a point where the relationship isn't completely safe, or there's not a degree of the right degree of trust. And so there exists this, like, resistance to change. But I absolutely think that your partner is the best catalyst for change. Like, if you want to change and grow in your life, then the best thing that you can do for yourself is to be in a romantic partnership with someone, in a good romantic partnership, in a conscious romantic partnership, because that has the greatest potential to change you into your most optimal form.
The thing is, these days, the way I see people are afraid to passionately fall in love. The whole notion of falling in love is scary. So we shyly get into love. We always think consciously, and we always hold ourselves back from falling in love because we're afraid from, I don't know, getting used to it, rejection, forgetting about our own goals, individual goals in lives, and being sucked into a relationship. Do you think this is a healthy way to see relationships with the complex life that we live in, especially with the, I don't know, like globalization? Chances are you connect with people in different countries, so maybe you don't want to move together yet. Maybe you're so focused into your career, and you see a relationship, falling madly in a relationship will compromise your career. So we don't see. I won't say I don't want to make it a generalization, but to a certain extent, lots of time we don't put a relationship as a priority in life. We put ourselves first and then relationship. And we're afraid. I think we're afraid to fall in love. This applies to many people that I know, and me included.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that, yeah, there's a lot of fear there. But I think the fear comes from, it doesn't come from your heart. It actually comes from your mind and your ego. That's where it comes from. All the fears that you mentioned, those are ego fears. And when we quiet the mind and we let the heart speak, that's when you actually get the calling to connect. But most people are not living at the level of the heart. Most people are living at the level of the mind. Most people are living at the level of, if I give you this much attention, what will I get? If I give you this amount of my time or resources, what will I miss out on? It's still that trade, commercial, capitalistic kind of lens through which we regard relationships. But I can tell you this, I don't think anybody is on their deathbed thinking, I wish I would have made more money, or I wish I would have, gone on that, like, I wish I would have, like, spent more time by myself. Like, the number one thing that people on their deathbed wish for is, like, I wish I would have, like, had more love in my life. I wish I would have had more connection in my life. I wish there was somebody here to witness my life. Like, that's what people wish for. But right now, but you're right, like, the globalism, globalization and commerce and all this stuff, it just exacerbates the ego. It just makes us feel that we're in this, like, silo. I am this, I am my bank account, I am my job, I am my career, I am, and I'm not this. I'm not this other person. I'm not this. I'm not, like, there's this separation. But ultimately, I believe that people want, like, at the heart level, they deeply want connection. They deeply want it. They crave it at the soul level. But their ego is keeping them separated. That's what I believe.
Fair point, and I second you in that. I second you in that. It's just hard. Again, we live in capitalism, you know. It's hard to shut the brain, shut the mind, and listen to the heart. It's harder than I think. This is what I've seen, you know.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it's hard. However, I would say that living from the heart and quieting the mind is probably one of the most worthwhile goals that you can ever pursue.
Yeah.
That is something that you will never regret, I don't think. And so that's why, for me, in the past year, something that I've really ripened to is, like, a spiritual practice that really puts heart-centeredness at the core of it. And I found that through yoga, through meditation, and through tantra. Many people find it through organized religion. Some people find it through nature. There's many different modalities, but I think, like, quieting the mind and letting the heart speak is the only way to live a quality life.
And
Like,
yeah.
that's something that I think, pretty much across time, across faiths, across, like, nationalities, that's the main message that every single thing that's ever been written is all about.
Yeah, I agree. I second you in that. I second you in that. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine who's been filming documentaries all over the world, and he highlighted this point. Wherever he goes, to any remote village, to any different religion, it's always about this faith kind of thing, you know, that exists. It's all the same message, but we're too blind, you know. We always ignore it, and we get stuck in the technicalities of following faiths and religions. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yes.
There's
Um,
more that unites us that separates us. That's my fundamental belief.
Yeah, I agree. And the more you travel, the more you realize this. Same, but different. But it's still.
Same is different. Yeah. I would have gotten that t-shirt when I had the chance.
I wanna touch a bit on the topic of polyamory, because I think it's the new LGBT nowadays. It's rising. It's rising. It's being judged, but I think within 20, 30 years, it'll be more accepted. And the fundamental question with polyamory would be, isn't jealousy a human nature? And how can you be in a relationship where you accept your partner to be with multiple people? I think this needs an entire session, but like briefly, like that's just the topic of
I can always
ability.
come back.
What?
I said I can always come back. I'd be
Yeah, yeah,
glad
we
to.
can have it. We can have an exclusive one about
Yes.
this one. But briefly, how do you address the question of jealousy in a
Yeah,
relationship?
so whenever I have a lot of like personal experience with polyamory, and like both like as a spectator in the community and like personally in my own relationships. And whenever I reveal that fact, often I get that same question. It's like, well, what do you do about jealousy? Isn't jealousy normal? And it absolutely is. Jealousy is as normal as hunger is. But somehow we still have like sometimes you still have like you have food in the fridge, but yet you're still kind of hungry, right? Like it doesn't mean that you should like gorge or starve yourself, but it just to me like jealousy, like hunger, is it's like a signal. It's the canary in the mine shaft, right? Like it's a signal that tells you, hey, there's something that you should look at. Hey, there's like an insecurity there, or hey, there's like a fundamental need that's not being met, and it's an opportunity for you to communicate more, and it's an opportunity for you to advocate for your needs more. I think that like even monogamous relationships are not do not inoculate you against jealousy. It's not like you get into a monogamous relationship and you're like, ah, I'm happy now that I'll never have to feel jealous ever again. Like monogamous people, I'm sure that you've seen, are often very jealous. I think what people talk about, what people are really concerned about when it comes to jealousy and the polyamorous relationship is that they think that because there's an understanding that your partner is, maybe sexual or romantic with other people, that you have no right to express that jealousy. And that's absolutely incorrect. That like the conversation about jealousy is an ongoing one in healthy polyamorous relationships, and it's really much like hunger. It's a starting off point, right? It's something that you should be aware of, and it's something that you can communicate about and resolve together. So it's not the case that you decide to be in a polyamorous relationship and now all bets are off. Each partner can do whatever they like, and no one can express the fact that they're jealous because you quote unquote agreed to it. That's not a healthy polyamorous relationship. I would say that that's a very toxic one. So, in a healthy polyamorous connection, the conversation about jealousy is an ongoing one. So it's not that you don't feel jealous. It's not that you don't feel jealous, and it's not that you don't express it, but it's that that you deal with it actively, and it's that you actually do some problem solving around it.
I uh, I think the complexity of polyamory lies in the fact that there is, to a certain extent, one way to do monogamy, but polyamory is a spectrum. There are multiple ways to do it. Like it's
Yeah, snowflakes,
uh,
all of them, very unique.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree on that.
It's kind of like a
Um,
Lego, like build your own adventure. Like whereas monogamy is like paint by numbers, right? Like kind of thing. Whereas, polyamory is like Lego. You build your own castle. And the beautiful thing about it is that, it can reflect your unique needs and your unique desires, and it's going to look different for different people. And there isn't one, handbook to go by. But I would also argue that there's not one way to do monogamy either, right? Like we under that's going to look very different in at least heterosexual monogamous relationships. So I still put them. I don't put polyamory and monogamy
category.
like at
Um,
odds with each other. They're on a spectrum. They are on a spectrum.
Fair, fair. I think this conversation we should have a different one on it, like exclusively on this topic because it's fast.
Yeah, super fast.
I really enjoyed this conversation. It took us a while to get into it, but once we got into it, it was nice, you know?
Yeah, it was really nice. It was lovely to connect, and lovely to really touch on topics that I think we both are passionate about.
Yeah, and I think it's lovely to share stuff with whoever want to hear about it, like you're not forcing people to listen, but whoever want to listen, there is content for people to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, should we call it a day?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. We could call it a day. Like I don't know, download the video, maybe have an audio of it, and then release it somewhere. But thank you very much. Thank you for your
Awesome.
time.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll talk another time.
appreciated.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.
Mwah. Bye bye. Bye.